Does the smell of perfume give you a headache? Does the idea of walking by dryer exhaust make you cringe in disgust? Do you find it difficult to be in public places because of all of the fragrant smells in the air? Or do you sometimes get the horrific taste of chemicals in your mouth from being around someone who is wearing cologne or has laundered their clothing with fabric softeners? If you've said yes to any of these questions, then you have a condition that is known as multiple chemical sensitivities, or MCS, which is also known as environmental illness, or EI. The symptoms of this illness can range from mild symptoms, like headaches from low exposure to perfume, to severe reactions, like central nervous system convulsions, in response to the same amount of perfume or other chemicals. As it turns out, MCS and many other illnesses like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and anxiety disorders are actually rooted in impaired limbic system function in the brain. The really great news is that we now know how to create changes in brain function that can correct this impairment and as a result, help you to recover. So if you suffer with MCS or any other limbic system condition, my heart goes out to you. I know exactly what it's like to suffer with this because it was just a few years ago that I was disabled with severe MCS, fibromyalgia, and electric hypersensitivity syndrome. I am now 100% recovered from all of these conditions through correcting my limbic system. In fact, teaching people how to correct limbic system function is at the heart of what I do through the dynamic neural retraining system. I travel globally to bring this knowledge of neuroplasticity along with tools for healing to people throughout the world who are suffering with associated illnesses. I do this because I've been in your shoes and I know how disabling it can be to live with these illnesses. I also know that most medical doctors don't understand this condition. They don't know how to diagnose it properly, nor do they know how to treat it. The sharp and toxic qualities in fabric softeners and perfumes are some of the worst culprits for people with MCS and can literally leave you running in the other direction for safety. At the height of illness, I suffered from MCS, fibromyalgia, and electric hypersensitivity syndrome, and would experience a range of symptoms that doctors could not explain. My sense of smell had morphed into a vigilant watchdog, warning me of impending danger. Exposures to even the smallest amount of chemicals, fragrances, and electromagnetic fields could produce headaches, cognitive impairment, tremors, inappropriate emotional reactions, racing heart rate, body flushing, loss of voice, extreme fatigue, insomnia, food sensitivities, excessive mucus production, shortness of breath, sore throat, and muscle and joint pain. It sounds like a living hell, and it was. With this specific form of injury, the brain, in its infinite self-protective capacity, is able to detect the slightest amount of chemicals. The trauma from the initial injury causes cross-wiring in the limbic system, resulting in abnormal sensory perception. In the case of MCS, this usually manifests as a heightened ability to detect chemicals in your environment, especially through your sense of smell and taste. At any given moment, your limbic system is filtering and sorting over 1 billion bits of sensory information in your internal and external environment. Each stimulus has its own meaning and association. Your brain's job is to discern the stimulus, categorize it in terms of safe or unsafe, and run the corresponding program. You don't have to think about it. Your brain is categorizing incoming information into already existing files for you. It then sends messages to the rest of your body, instructing it to react in a way it believes to be appropriate. In the person with MCS, this maladaptive protective mechanism becomes an unconscious, hardwired response in the brain that causes the body to react to even the smallest amount of chemicals as potentially life-threatening. The initial trauma sets off a protective mechanism along with a 5-alarm stress response and an inflammatory cycle in the central nervous system that feeds back on itself. Dr. Martin Pall, a renowned biochemist, has named this inflammatory cycle the no-ono cycle. From here, survival messages are sent to the rest of the body that can impair your ability to function and alter your state of physical health. In another self-protective mechanism, the cell walls shut down and do not let anything out or let anything in. This interrupts the normal growth cycle of the systems in the body. Over time, this destructive cycle leads to limbic system priming, which basically means that you need less and less stimulus to produce the same reaction. This can also lead to limbic sensitization, which is the brain's inability to discriminate between stimulus, and the spreading of sensitivities jumps from one stimulus to another. For example, you may have started with MCS, and maybe it just started with a sensitivity to one chemical and then spread to other chemicals. And then you developed fibromyalgia and food sensitivities. Or perhaps you started with chronic fatigue syndrome and then developed multiple chemical sensitivities. Any combination of these illnesses is common for people who suffer from a limbic system impairment. The expression of impairment in the limbic system can manifest on physical, mental, and emotional levels. Whether your symptoms are mild or severe, it commonly affects many systems of the body, including the central nervous system, cardiovascular, immune, reproductive, gastrointestinal, respiratory, musculoskeletal system, skin, eyes, ears, nose, and throat. Most people with MCS know intuitively that the central nervous system is involved somehow, but until now have not known how to treat it. The dynamic neural retraining system helps you interrupt the limbic system trauma loop while redirecting and restoring normal limbic system function. It changes the internal state of the brain and body from one of protection to one of growth. This change in neuronal patterns and firing eventually turns off the chronic stress alarm response and the inflammatory cycle, which in turn alters the messages being sent to the physiology of the body. As a result, your sense of smell will return to normal again and your hypervigilance will abate. Your brain and body will no longer be so sensitive to chemicals in the environment. And your brain will no longer send the corresponding 5-alarm stress response to the rest of your body. When this cycle is turned off, the systems and organs of your body have the opportunity to start healing. Living your life with a high degree of environmental awareness is much different than living your life in avoidance. Anyone who is suffering with MCS knows that many of the chemicals that are found in everyday personal hygiene or cleaning products are toxic and they add unnecessary stress to the brain and body. But you don't have to have chemical sensitivities or be sick to know that. People with MCS are able to pick up on the smallest amounts of chemicals in the environment due to an impaired mechanism in the brain. Consequently, the brain and body react to any amount of chemical as if it is life-threatening and triggers an immediate aversion response along with a 5-alarm stress reaction and chronic inflammatory cycle. The alarm system may be faulty, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The fact that the mechanism in your brain for detecting chemicals is on super high alert and is set off by the tiniest amounts of chemicals speaks to the alarm being defective. Once this mechanism is restored to normal function, your sense of smell and taste will return to normal, and you will not be hypervigilant or reactive as a result. This will restore your freedom to go where you want, whenever you want. The added bonus is that through this journey, you have gained a huge amount of knowledge about environmental awareness and will undoubtedly continue to make healthy and wise choices in your life. This is not only good for you, but it's good for your family and the planet as well. I'm so thankful that this knowledge is becoming more mainstream and that people want to go green in their lives. This change not only helps the planet, but it will help prevent suffering and illness for millions. You know, the one thing that anyone with chemical sensitivities knows firsthand is the dangers that are associated with the chemicals in everyday products. Not because you are the kind of person who is particularly interested in that kind of thing, but because when you started to get sick, your brain and body were severely reacting to the chemicals in most scented products. As a result, you were forced to do a lot of research and live a more healthy and organic life. People with MCS are the canary in the coal mine, warning us of the dangers in our environment and bringing the important message that we need to live differently on this planet. And I realize that people with MCS are merely trying to survive in a world that appears to be ignorant of the ways in which it is killing itself, and that most of the MCS community are desperately trying to warn and protect us all from needless suffering. I get it. Really, I do. When I was sick, I was completely baffled that the rest of society could not detect the horrific qualities of chemicals in the products that we commonly use. And what confused me even more was that when I told other people about the hidden dangers lurking there, they didn't seem to care or thought that because they were not sick, that it wouldn't affect them. I wore my ability to detect chemicals like a badge of honor and saw it in some ways as a gift and warning sign to protect both myself and others from the dangers in the chemical products that they were using. In order to maintain our health and prevent illness, we need to monitor the amount of environmental stress on our brains and bodies. However, this does not mean that we need to live our lives in complete avoidance of everything that may contain chemicals. For instance, even though I am completely healed of MCS, fibromyalgia, and electric hypersensitivity syndrome, I live my life with a high degree of environmental awareness. Yes, I can go to any public place now, and for instance, attend live theater while the person beside me is wearing perfume and has laundered their clothing using scented detergent and fabric softener. However, that does not mean that I choose to wear perfume or use petroleum-based products. With MCS, there are two truths. The first is that the chemicals in the products that people commonly use are largely toxic and unhealthy. The second truth is that the sensory mechanism for detecting chemicals is not working properly for people who suffer from MCS. These two statements are not contradictory. They actually support our need to live with greater awareness. The limbic system impairment involved with MCS causes the brain to pick up on the tiniest amount of chemicals in our environment and reacts as if they are potentially life-threatening. That is the impairment. Walking by someone who has just washed their hair in regular shampoo, or is wearing deodorant, or might be wearing perfume, is not in itself life-threatening. That flight or fight reaction to relatively mild exposure is due to the instinctive and unconscious reaction of an impaired limbic system. You have the power within you to rewire your limbic system so that it no longer reacts in that way. And when you do, your sense of smell will go back to normal again, the way it was before you got sick. Except that now, with all of the knowledge and experience you have in your life, you will likely choose to live your life with a high degree of environmental awareness. This is a wise and healthy choice for yourself, your family, and the planet. That's like asking the question, how do you make the perfect storm? Every storm has to have the correct number of ingredients to create the perfect environment. The right temperature differential, moisture, winds, and so forth. For some, developing MCS is much like the perfect storm in that it is caused by a complex combination of various stressors that push the limbic system past its breaking point. While for others, MCS can be a very straightforward toxic injury to the brain that soon after manifests as symptoms of MCS. This perfect storm usually consists of a lot of different stressors, chemical, mental, and emotional. It may have developed through a combination of different stressors or one specific toxic exposure. Maybe it was a gradual onset, or perhaps it was quite sudden. Whether this stress is physical, as in the form of a toxic injury or a car accident, virus or bacteria, or emotional, like the stress that is involved with a traumatic emotional event, or mental stress, with replaying circuits of worry, fear, or anxiety. Accumulative chronic stress is harmful to the brain and can be the catalyst for many diseases. Limbic system function is affected by a wide range of stressors and can manifest as symptoms in a number of different conditions, such as multiple chemical sensitivities, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, anxiety disorders, chronic pain, sensitivity to light or sound, electric hypersensitivity syndrome, and some forms of depression. Within each one of these conditions, there is a high overlap in brain dysfunction and associated physical, emotional, and psychological symptoms. What I can tell you with all certainty is that developing MCS is not your fault. Again, let me repeat, this is not your fault. Far too often, when medical professionals cannot understand the genesis of an illness, or if they can't help you, they assume that it must be in your head. You are not going crazy. This is not in your imagination. MCS is a very real condition that affects both the neurology and physiology of the body. You did not do anything wrong, and you did not attract this illness to you in any way, shape, or form. You have a form of limbic system impairment or an acquired brain injury. The good news is that we now know how to treat this illness through self-directed neuroplasticity. This new understanding of brain function as it relates to optimal health is a new and profound paradigm for healing. Once you have the tools for creating self-directed neuroplastic changes in your own brain and possess the commitment and dedication to practice, you will have the power to rewire your brain, transform your health, and reclaim your life. It will take considerable effort, focus, and commitment on your behalf. However, you can empower yourself and change your life, as witnessed by so many others who have recovered from chronic illness through the dynamic neural retraining system.